Hi everyone, we're back. Before we get into today's breakfast soapbox about the Pope following the Watchtower's advice on apologizing, we just want to give a little update.
Yeah, it's good to be back into our normal routine after Flipmas videos, but
the Flipmas videos took a lot of time, and we pretty much, other than just maybe a few hours, didn't work for about 2 weeks. We were just doing Flipmas. So.
Which was fine because the weather was like below zero and it warmed up just at the end of it. So in the last few days it's been in the 20s, so we were able to get some work done, and Tiffany mowed my hair, and so now we can get back to our normal routine, thank goodness. And hopefully it'll warm up so we can get back into putting in some of the car stuff as well. But I think what we'll do is we'll throw in some older videos that we have. This one's of a 1919 Chevy on its initial startup, so that might be kind of fun if you want to watch that at the end.
So for today's breakfast soapbox, we were watching a video on YouTube the other day, and it was discussing a Young People Ask article and its advice on apologizing.
And kind of at the same time, we're seeing on the news that the Pope slapped some lady's hand away who pulled him toward her, and he's applying the Watchtower's advice and issuing apology.
Which is really the Bible's advice.
Right. But he could have easily reasoned, this lady invaded my personal space and she pulled me toward her, and, you just don't touch people and get in their bubble like that. But he didn't take that escape route. And it's true that it's kind of a trivial thing that he's apologizing for, but he's also issued public apologies for abuses that happen within the Catholic Church because of their policies. Now, granted, that's probably been coerced, but nonetheless, he made the apologies. But that got us to thinking, why doesn't the Watchtower or even individual elders ever apologize?
And we're not talking about, I'm sorry I scuffed your shoe or something like that. We mean apologize for something serious they did, along with acts that befit repentance.
Right. The Pope apologized and has made at least some public acknowledgement for the abuses Catholics suffered for their policies.
And we're not saying the Pope is doing enough there, but is the hierarchy of Jehovah's Witnesses making any such public statements?
Absolutely not. Just the non-admittal, tape-recorded, robotic statement of, "We abhor child abuse," which is like if I was smacking my wife at home and saying, "I abhor domestic violence." It's not an apology or even an admittance of wrong. And if you're making that statement while you're smacking your wife up at home, it's just a form of soft gaslighting, as if to say, "Oh, we don't do that, do we?" Kind of like the Watchtower does all the time. But they always frame everything to the lowest common denominator.
Like it's only those on the bottom of the ladder that need to apply the scriptures, and it's no different with apologizing.
This shows the core of the hierarchical system, which goes against everything that Jesus taught in conducting yourself as a lesser one.
The least always need to yield to authority, no matter what, and that's the way it's always framed, even though it's never really said. When's the last time you saw an article aimed at elders and how they need to apologize?
Right. As a case in point, consider Matthew 7:3.
Matthew 7:3. Why then do you look at the straw in your brother's eye, but do not consider the rafter in your own eye?
I remember a Watchtower study using this verse to say, don't look for a straw in the elder's eye when you have a rafter in your own eye. And it could go that way by just reading the context here in Matthew. But if you go to the cross-reference in Luke 6:42, we can see the power in parallel accounts. Because in verse 40, starting in verse 40, we see the actual angle of the perspective in the point Jesus is making. So let's read that, starting in verse 40 through 42.
A pupil is not above his teacher, but everyone that is perfectly instructed will be like his teacher. Why then do you look at the straw that is in your brother's eye, but do not observe the rafter that is in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, "Brother, allow me to extract the straw that is in your eye," while you yourself are not looking at the rafter in that eye of yours? Hypocrite, first extract the rafter from your own eye, and then you will see clearly how to extract the straw that is in your brother's eye.
So verse 40 speaks about a pupil being below his teacher. So at first glance we might think, oh, well, that shows that it should be talking about how the pupil needs to consider himself as a lesser one than his elder, the teacher. However, that would contradict Matthew 23, 6 through 12, which talks about having only one teacher, the Christ. Let's read that.
They like the most prominent place at evening meals and the front seats in the synagogues, and the greetings in the marketplaces, and to be called Rabbi by men. But you, do not you be called Rabbi, for one is your teacher, whereas all you are brothers. Moreover, do not call anyone your father on earth, for one is your Father, the heavenly one. Neither be called leaders, for your leader is one, the Christ. But the greatest one among you must be your minister. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted.
So the scripture here in Luke 6 is more reasonably coming from the angle that those taking the lead should conduct themselves as their teacher, the Christ did. And they can only hope to be as good as their teacher, the Christ. And this becomes obvious if we reason on it, because if this were applying to the pupil, that means that he could never become more than the elder is. And if an imperfect man as a teacher is the apex of achievement for a pupil, that would sure limit a person's growth. However, if the Christ is the pupil's actual teacher, the pupil could certainly excel beyond the elder as an imperfect human that the pupil learns from. So it becomes obvious that this information in Luke 6 is not angled toward the pupil or the rank and file, but rather it's aimed at the one taking the lead, or the elder. As more proof of this, let's look at verse 39. Read that one.
Then he also spoke in illustration to them. A blind man cannot guide a blind man, can he? Both will tumble into a pit, will they not?
So is Jesus again making a point of hierarchical authority here, stating that the Amharites, or the rank and file, and Amharites just means people of the land, the general people, that was kind of a derogatory term, or at least it became a derogatory term as the Pharisees called people the accursed people of the land. But is Jesus here saying that they are blind, as the Pharisees did? And saying that the Amharites don't have a right to lead because they are blind? Or does it seem more likely that Jesus is counseling any who would take the lead that they ought to look to the way Jesus guided people so that they are not blind guides like the Pharisees are? Again, look at verse 37. Who's more likely to judge, as the two previous accounts in this chapter show? The self-righteous elders or the Amharites, or the general rank and file? Jesus obviously showed who it was. Continuing in verse 38.
Practice giving, and people will give to you. They will pour into your laps a fine measure, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. For with the measure that you are measuring out, they will measure out to you in return.
So is Jesus here setting up a hierarchical system of spiritual clientelism, wherein if the Amorite, or general people, the rank and file, the pupil, does good to the elder and doesn't judge the elder, then the pupil or the Amorite will get something in return from the elder, like, say, a position? Again, that would directly contradict what is said in verses 32 to 34. Read those.
And if you love those loving you, of what credit is it to you? For even the sinners love those loving them. And if you do good to those doing good to you, really of what credit is it to you? Even the sinners do the same. Also, if you lend without interest to those from whom you hope to receive, of what credit is it to you? Even sinners lend without interest to sinners, so that they may get back as much.
So it appears obvious that the thrust of these verses is primarily counsel to any who would take the lead, as verse 36 again shows.
Continue becoming merciful, just as your Father is merciful.
Continuing, let's read 37 through 46.
Moreover, stop judging, and you will by no means be judged, and stop condemning, and you will by no means be condemned. Keep on releasing, and you will be released. Practice giving, and people will give to you. They will pour into your laps a fine measure, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. For with the measure that you are measuring out, they will measure out to you in return. Then he also spoke an illustration to them. A blind man cannot guide a blind man, can he? Both will tumble into a pit, will they not? A pupil is not above his teacher, but everyone that is perfectly instructed will be like his teacher. Why then do you look at the straw that is in your brother's eye, but you do not observe the rafter that is in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, Brother, allow me to extract the straw that is in your eye, while you yourself are not looking at the rafter in that eye of yours? Hypocrite! First extract the rafter from your own eye, and then you will see clearly how to extract the straw that is in your brother's eye. For there is not a fine tree producing rotten fruit. Again, there is not a rotten tree producing fine fruit. For each tree is known by its own fruit. For example, people do not gather figs from thorns, nor do they cut grapes off a thorn bush. A good man brings forth good out of the good treasure of his heart, but a wicked man brings forth what is wicked out of his wicked treasure. For out of the heart's abundance his mouth speaks. Why then do you call me Lord, Lord, but do not do the things I say?
So does it seem to you that Jesus is supporting or reinstituting the Pharisaic, what did he say there, hypocrite? The hypocritical Pharisaic system he just got done denouncing in the beginning of the chapter? Or does it seem to you to be more reasonable that Jesus is telling those that would take the lead how they should conduct themselves in contrast to those religious leaders at the beginning of the chapter?
I guess you can decide for yourself, but it appears that the Pope is more righteous than elders or the governing body, because in line with Watchtower Council, the Pope is at least doing some sort of apologizing. But does Watchtower hierarchy apologize?
Did Tony apologize to others for stumbling them with his liquor run?
Is there any public statement on the website or anywhere else that apologizes for the policies that allowed and even caused so much abuse? Oh, they've changed some policies to protect themselves legally, but where's the apology?
Right. Just changing policies without an apology is just a cover-up. But again, the Watchtower never frames any apology in a context where it's those taking the lead that are apologizing.
Or at least they never enforce it on the elders. I mean, is there a chapter in the Shepherd the Flock book on taking the lead and apologizing?
Right. The elders are their own police agents, and the CO's there just to support whatever they decide. And by the way the Watchtower always frames it, it's never the parents apologizing to children, or God forbid, the elders or farther up the chain up. They never apologize. And I told that to an elder once, even mentioning how the governing body never apologizes, and he brought out the whole beliefs clarified thing, and I said, yeah, but they don't apologize for something they've misled on. It's just changed. And quite honestly, it's not even those guys that change it. They die off, and the next set of governing body members changes it. There's never an apology that's issued for misleading people for what they've said that totally have an effect on people's lives. I know for us personally, when we went through our whole marry only in the Lord versus date only in the Lord dilemma, afterward during a shepherding call, an elder said, well, maybe in 20 years I'll apologize and I'll admit we were wrong. I told him it won't take 20 years and it will take longer than 20 years. What I meant was, it'll take longer than 20 years because our vow is till death do you part. And it won't take 20 years for Jehovah to prove that they were wrong. And that turned out to be true because in a couple of weeks, a sister that was baptized at the assembly just the previous weekend, it wasn't a couple of weeks until she was married inside of a neighboring kingdom hall.
Are you trying to tell us that they weren't dating before she got baptized?
Exactly.
Unlike the Pope, one elder told us, I will never apologize for Jehovah's standards.
In other words, whatever he thinks is Jehovah's standards that he wants to impose on you, or the organization wants to impose on you, or actions that he just wants to excuse, all he has to do is say, oh, well, that's Jehovah's standards, as he tramples over you with his abuse.
Yeah. Another elder said to us when he did us wrong, "I'm sorry you feel that way."
Which also isn't an apology. It's a sentimental word shuffle that just shoves the blame on you for feeling the way that you do, while ignoring the actions that they committed that caused the issue in the first place.
Another elder said snottily, "Okay, fine. I'm sorry. There, you happy?" That's obviously not a sincere apology of repentance.
In our appeal committee, when we were naming all the unjust, abusive treatment that we were receiving over the last 2 years from our local elders, because you're sitting there in front of your local elders, but also in front of these other 3 people that are supposed to be kind of, you feel like anyways, they're going to be mediating for you or trying to look at it in a balanced way. Not the case at all. But when we were relating all those things that our local elders were doing, much of which went in direct opposition to what's in print, one of our elders said, our local elders said, well, maybe we could have handled that better. In other words, yeah, what we did caused your situation, but no matter, you're still the one getting DF'd, while we just excuse our wrongdoing. So they never take the lead in showing the power and humility in apologizing. Like it's so damaging to Jehovah's name to say, sorry.
Not sorry.
Yeah, they don't even get to the point of saying, sorry, not sorry. So maybe Watchtower can take a lesson from the Pope.
Yeah. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment in the comment section of where somebody didn't apologize to you or did apologize to you, but it wasn't sincere.
And enjoy the video of the 1919 Chevy on its first startup.
There, now it's working. I've been working on this 1919 Chevy. Been kind of going to town on it. Got the box all built. I haven't shot a video of it in a while. I got the doors mounted. Did the hardware in them. And had to do the wood. Not a perfect job, but it's good enough. I got the tank installed. That took some doing because nobody ever seems to remember to build it so you can fit the tank in there before they start building, so I had to shave the back of this out in order to make the tank fit, but it fits in there good and snug now. I don't even think I'll have to bolt it in. It's got a nice top cap on it, and downspouts on that side over there too, along with the fill tube. What else I do? Let's see, the boxes all finished. I used treated 2x6s on it and 2x12s for the tailgate. I sold some rockers off the Chevy, off the head. But I got all the hardware on there. Had to re-weld this one and this one in order to make the length be tight on both sides the same. This bracket here is supposed to come down straight, but I angled it so that way I can bolt the fender to it. And I was going to bring it up higher, but I think I'm going to leave it down low just to give it a nice low slung look, and it ain't like we plan on actually hauling anything real heavy in this thing. Let's see, what else? I'm building the body now because this thing didn't have a tub, and so I'm just using sheet metal like that, and just bent the edges over on the back, and then just wrapping the wood that's there. And I wrapped the front as well, right there on the edge, and then wrapped the top too. But it works pretty good. It'll be good enough. Slam this door. A little tweaked. And then I'll just use a piece of sheets metal across the back here Maybe trim it off with a 2x2 or something. But that's about it. It's not too bad for a few days of work. All right. Okay, we're on the first start of this 1919 Chevy.
It's cold today.
It's a little chilly.
Yeah.
All right, see if it'll turn over. Hold on. Try that.
Go.
Let it charge up for a minute.
Okay, I don't know what all this
Unhook
is for.
this.
Okay, what's all this for? This brakes?
Yep.
This is clutch?
Brakes, clutch. It's just a normal car.
Okay, so what's the gas? Up
Your
here?
gas pedal's up there and it's on your right, just like a normal
This is
car.
gas. So this is
Your gas is
down?
over here.
Oh, this is
See,
gas.
push on the gas pedal. See how
Oh,
it
I
moves
see.
your handle too? That handle is a throttle lock, so it's like your cruise control. Let go. Watch the pedal down there. See that? Oh wait, wrong one. This one's your throttle lock.
Okay.
So this one on the right, your
So
left is your throttle.
We can use that as a gas too. Then.
Yep, that's your gas pedal if you want to hold it down
What's
a
this
little.
for? Timing?
That's your timing, so we should probably bring it down a little bit. Try that.
Okay. You ready?
Yep. Oh, got it.
Oh, that would help.
Yep, go ahead. Let it stop. Charge up.
Cold. Shut the doors.
Say you're cold? Shut the doors? Well, geez. Can't. Oh, dang it. There's a cord in the way.
I'm really cold today. I'm just chilling. So.
Oh, wait. I know. There you go. Much better.
I'm so glad my finger was not stuck in there. I would have been cussing you out so bad.
What's new? All right, click that up and do it. All right, stop. Guess we got some more tinkering to do. Okay.
I got my door shut, so it's warmer.
Oh, we can get this one shut.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Need to hurry up, huh? Okay.
So what do we do?
We
The points?
clean the points off and the rotor and the cap and also the spark plug connections and the plugs, so everything's cleaned up.
Put fuel in the tank.
Yep, we put fuel in the tank to make it a little easier.
Good.
So, well, let's
It's
see
gonna
if
rain
this.
a little bit again.
Okay.
We gotta hurry.
Okay.
Ready?
Go ahead. Hold on. Go ahead. Ooh, it popped.
We need to choke.
Do it again. Stop.
Are we on? Yeah, it's on.
Go ahead. I don't know whether that should be up or down.
I thought the guy said it was supposed to come like
Okay, let's try it then. Go ahead. No, I ain't giving it. Maybe more fuel.
Well, my foot's right.
Okay, go ahead. Give it a little gas then. No, hold it down a little. Well, it's running anyway. Now we just got to figure out why it won't stay running. Maybe fuel situation. Okay, the petcock valve was off, so we didn't have any fuel coming in. Now we're leaking fuel, so we'll see how that works out.
Come on, let's do this. It's freezing. You know what time it is?
No.
It's like 6:15.
6:50? Really?
What time did you think it was?
I don't know, like 7:30. 602 or something.
Okay, come on, I heard this something.
All right.
Ready?
Yep. Waiting on you. Hold this down. She runs. She's frying something. I think there's water. No, it was hanging up there. I don't know what all that is. I don't know why it was idling so high. It seems like that's reverse. It's like this is.
Yeah.
I don't know why that would be, but that was like low. So you got it on there backwards? Does this flip around or what?
I don't know. But when you were pushing that down, the accelerator was all the way to the floor. Is that just water?
Yeah, there's definitely water in there. I don't know why, but I don't know if it was just settling the head
Well,
or
I
what.
just wonder if it was rained on.
I mean, that could be.
Strange.
Like frying eggs. I'm making feel like mad too. Close up that cock off.